This morning, one of my son-in-laws is going to speak, and just really excited about somebody I really love a lot. He's got a great story, so let's welcome Dwight Farmer.
My life is pretty complex, and so I didn't really know where to start, so I just figured I'd kind of gloss over a little bit of it, so I think maybe we'll start with this. This is where the trouble began. This was the answer. It worked for a little while. We had, my brother and I, we had all kinds of good stuff given to us. We had a lot of toys. We had just about anything anybody could want. We weren't a church family, although we did when we were children, when we were real young, we went to Bible school. That was I was adopted. So that was kind of part of the deal, was that they had to take us to Bible school was part of the deal for the adoption. Back then, that's the way they did things. And by the time I was 3 years old, I'd had my first drink. My mom was an alcoholic. She kept a keg of beer on tap outside in the garage, so she was always drinking. When I was 3 years old, she set down a cup on a table that was beside me, and I grabbed it, and I didn't just drink it, I chugged it. I liked it. It was good. So I chugged almost the whole thing, and I got this feeling like I was dizzy, because I used to like to do this, you know, spin around as a kid. So I got that feeling, and I thought it was great. And coincidentally, at the same time, when I was 3 years old, I got my first guitar. Coincidence? Maybe. I always knew that's what I wanted to do. From the time I was a little kid, I wanted to be a musician, and I pretty much followed my dreams throughout my life. That's where I went. Anyway, we wound up moving to a campground. My dad built a campground, which was really cool. Like I said, we had all kinds of cool stuff. Now, one thing that was interesting is the word love was never mentioned in our house. My dad bought us stuff and took us places, and I think that was his way of showing love, which was really interesting. And it was, like I said, we had motorcycles and all kinds of stuff like that. I was 10 years old here. Like the shoes? I wasn't the crazy one. The little kid on the back, my brother was crazy for riding with me. But so we always had, you know, fun stuff. And we had snowmobiles, motorcycles, boats. We went skiing. We, you know, grew up at a campground. We swam all the time. It was really marvelous. But underneath it all, there was trouble. My parents fought all the time. As I said, my mom was an alcoholic, and my dad had a lot of girlfriends, and it didn't match very well. I remember being a child. I don't know if you know a mobile home. We lived in a mobile home. And the walls are like really thin, and you can hear through the walls. It's like they're not even there. And I remember being a little child laying, and our bedroom was right next to my parents' bedroom. And as we were laying in bed at night sometimes, you just hear them fight, screaming at each other. Two people that you loved more than anything in the world, just going at it. And occasionally you'd hear the smack as my dad hit my mom. And the wall would shake when he threw her against the wall and hit her again. And you just kind of cover your head underneath the blankets and, you know, and wish it would go away. Okay, so anyway, we moved to the trailer park. My dad owned a trailer park, so we lived there for quite a while. And by the time I was 16, I was playing in bands, which I'd been playing in bands most of my life. And by the time I was 16, I think I was like 15 here. And the guy up there, the second guy from the left, is Rich. You see him here, and that's another wonderful testimony. He and I grew up together. He lived at our house for a long time. He was like a brother, and like last year, he wound up moving up here, and it's just fantastic. But anyway, that's another story. By the time I was 16, I started getting into drugs. I was drinking a lot. My mom. Before that, like I said, my mom always had a keg, and she had this yellow thermos that she would send me as a young child out to fill up the thermos with beer for, and bring it back to her. And I would go out and fill it up, drink it, fill it up, drink it, fill it up, and take it back. That was the only chore that I really enjoyed when I was growing up. But so this is, and now after we moved to the trailer park, well, before we moved to the trailer park, my dad built a bar. So that was really cool for me and my mom. So we had a bar. So we moved to the trailer park. The bar was right next to the trailer park. And I had a key because I would clean the bar on Sundays. So I used to sneak into the bar after the bar closed late at night and drink, And I wound up getting into drugs when I was 16. I hung out with a crazy crowd and I started, doing stuff. I wound up ODing on some really bad stuff, and I was in the hospital for 3 days hallucinating. And I remember at that time I prayed to God. And as I said, we weren't really a Christian family, although my dad didn't believe, my mom did believe, but I hadn't been to church for years, since I was a little kid. And I was so afraid. I was praying to God, and I promised him that if he saved me and kept me from dying, that I would, when I was 33 years old, I'd give my life to Jesus. Yeah, because I didn't think I'd live that long anyway. So by the time I was 21, things really started getting crazy. 21 was a really insane year. I'd been married, got divorced, got married at 20, divorced at 21. Started doing acid, started having acid parties at my house. And for my 21st birthday, I got a bartender's license. My dad said, "Happy birthday," the day after I went to work at the bar. So that wasn't sad because I was right where I wanted to be. I was right around all the alcohol and the party, and I was right in the midst of it all. At the same time, my mom kept getting worse and worse and worse. Her alcoholism had gotten extremely bad. She was withering away to nothing, and she was getting skinny and just getting big red marks, liver marks on her arms and stuff, and it was atrocious. So I continued, I continued to pursue my music and stuff during all of this. When the fall of my 21 years old, my mother got information she had 6 months to live. 6 months later, almost to the day, she died. I used to have nightmares about my mom dying before she died, and it was the worst thing I could ever think of, and it happened. 6 months after that, they gave my dad 6 months to live. 6 months almost to the day, he died. They died within just a week or so of each other, 1 year apart. Cancer, both of them. And within the next year, the rest of the folks that were close to me, my grandfather and my grandmother, who were the closest to me, died. And I left my brother and myself. My dad had set up an estate to take care of our, finances because he didn't think that we would be able to do it, which we probably wouldn't have. And the estate wound up robbing us blind. My dad sat down and told us what we had coming because he knew he was going to die, and we had over $500,000 coming. And by the time it was said and done, we got $5,000 or something, and the estate made excuses, and there was nothing we could do about it because they had full power, and so we lost everything. What money I did have, I wound up spending on equipment and drugs because I didn't want to face what I had to face with my parents dying, and so I just stayed high all the time, and so I got gear. I figured I was going to pursue my music career for the rest of my life, so I set myself up and put $20-some-odd thousand into a rig, and that's what I was going to do. So I wound up moving to Ohio to join a band called the Gods, and so the Gods brought me to Ohio. So I moved here, and I played with the Gods for like about a year, and all of my equipment got stolen. So everything that I put my life into was gone. I wound up starting from scratch, and I kept moving forward, and I wound up joining a band called Wicked Angel. That's where I met my buddy Thumper. If you guys know Thumper, Tony's the guy who's playing bass up here with us right now, right? We call him Thumper. Which one's me? The one on the left. But so my buddy Thumper, after I met him, a funny story is right after I'd met him the second day, he had given me, I joined the band, he gave me his phone number and he said, if you need anything, call me. Mistake. 2 days after that, I was driving a car, I was drinking, I didn't have my license, I didn't really own the car, and a semi pulled in front of me and ran over the front of the car, and I was sitting at a stoplight right in Columbus on 161. So I called Thumper, and he came and rescued me. So that's how our relationship started. But anyway, so we wound up getting a record deal. We went on tour. It was the closest thing that I ever came to realizing that dream that I had, that I thought was everything in the world to me, was becoming, just completely successful in music, and that's what I wanted to do. And despite myself of all the drugs and all the drinking and messing up so many opportunities, I almost got it. We went to Europe, we toured, we were very well received. We did 28 countries, and 28 cities and 8 countries in 30 days, and just had a blast. And things were looking really good. We got back, and one thing led to another. We lost our record deal. The record company we had sued us for $800,000 collectively, which we didn't have, and also put a stipulation against us that we weren't allowed to play together for 2 years, so they got 50% of everything we made. So needless to say, we had a rough couple of years. So after 2 years, we spent that 2 years recording another album, and we were in a band called Bone Shovel. That's Thumper on the left. Thumper on the right, and me. And so we'd spent 2 years recording this album. We went to Europe, and this album was pretty good. And we went to Europe and went back to our old record company that was in Europe, not the one that sued us, and they loved it. But one thing led to another, and we couldn't get it because pretty much they were afraid to touch us because of the lawsuit that happened the last time that we were with them. So our careers were pretty much ruined, and pretty much I had to write off, thinking that I was ever going to be successful at doing what it was that I've spent my whole life trying to do. So I went crazy, and I went further and further into the drugs, further and further into the alcohol. I started doing crack. I got hooked on crack. I wound up losing everything that I had. I wound up living in a tent in somebody's backyard, and I just met this guy because I had blown my relationships with all of my friends. I had some great friends that really tried to help me, and I just really messed it up because I just continued to deteriorate and try to commit suicide with drugs and alcohol, because that's what I was doing. I was trying to kill myself. I just didn't want to live. And one day, I went to a friend's house, and I was sitting over there smoking crack and drinking, and I'd been on a binge for about 2 months straight. You have to realize that when I started, I just didn't stop until I ran out of stuff, and then I would curl up in a ball for 3 days to a week and wouldn't even be able to move. I would just lay there and shake coming down off of this stuff because it was so incredibly painful. So I went over to a friend's house, and who shows up? Thumper. Okay, Thumper and I, like I said, we had been played in the band together. We had actually even been roommates for about 3 years. So we got really close, and we lost touch. And we sat there, and I'm smoking crack in the room with him sitting there. I'm drinking a beer, and he's talking about God. And so we start talking. He pulls me into the conversation. So he's telling me what he thinks God is, and I'm telling him what I think God is. And you have to realize that just a couple of months before this, I had my fist in the air, screaming, cussing God out, blaming him for every stinking thing that happened in my life. I was mad. I hated God. I was so mad. It was his fault my dad was dead. It's his fault my mom was dead. It's his fault that I lost everything. And it's his fault I was a drunk, But anyway, we talked about it, and he offered me a place to stay. I was homeless, and he said, you know, I got a room. I need someone to come and move in because I don't, you know, I need some help here. So the next day I wound up moving into the house with him. And on the way to his house, I had my last beer. I had a quart of beer in my hand, this $1 cheap junk stuff. And so I'm drinking my beer on the way. And he said, the only thing I ask is that you don't drink or do drugs in my house. I said, no problem. I got the beer almost finished. We got to his house. I threw the rest of it away. I wound up going to bed. And he asked me if I wanted to go to a small meeting at the church with him the next day to see his associate pastor. And he said that his associate pastor had invited me and said, you know, it's cool, come on. You know, it's just a little thing, just a couple of us are going to sit there and talk for a couple minutes. And I felt obligated because I felt like I owed him that because, you know, he came and rescued me, you know, and he was my old friend. I hadn't seen him in a long time. So the craziest thing happened. First miracle happened of this part. I woke up the next day with no hangover. That had never happened to me. I had been doing drugs for 2 months. I'd been drinking solid for 2 months, nonstop. I woke up and I didn't feel like I was going to die. I didn't lay there and shake and rattle and roll in bed and sweat. I didn't do that. I got up and I felt all right, considering all right. So I got in the car and we come to this little meeting he's talking about. It was here at this church. And we walked up the steps and we came up the steps over there and I stood outside of that door and I heard people praying loudly. And I stood there and I looked at him and I said, what did you do to me? And we stood there and waited until the praying stopped. And I was going, these guys are freaks. There's some weird people here. Came walking through that door. His little meeting was a leadership retreat with a couple dozen people. And I was here for 9 hours. I didn't have a chance. And so I wound up at the leadership meeting, and everybody was so gracious. I mean, this is supposed to be for people who have belonged to the church and have been here, and this is for leaders, you know. They welcomed me in, you know, and I remember I went back into the nursery, and Debbie, Mrs. Swanger, had a class back there, and I went back. I think I went back with Thumper or something. They put me in a newbie class. They had multiple classes, and she looked at me. She goes, after we were talking, she was talking about the Bible and talking about different things. She looked at me. She goes, "Are we on the same page?" And I said, "Yeah." I knew I needed help. You know, I was ready. I was ready. And I think she said the prayer of salvation with me right there. And I wound up, within a matter of a couple of days, I got the Holy Spirit. I got my prayer language. Just boom. It was like that. I mean, it just hit. Never had that hangover. I remember what it felt like whenever I was in Thumper's backyard and I was mowing or something, whenever the Holy Spirit hit. And it was like all the colors got really bright. Everything just got I mean, it was intense. Everything was more saturated. Everything just I felt almost like I was high, you know, but it was a different kind of high. It was kind of a good high, you know, and it was just amazing. And then the most amazing thing in the world happened. You have to, on the way, let me back up a minute. On the way to Thumper's house, I was whining and complaining and telling Thumper that I had lost everything. I ruined myself. I ruined my life. There was nothing that I could offer anyone. And there was no way that anybody would want anything to do with me. I'd never have another girlfriend. My life was over. And he just looked at me and kind of smiled and he said, "Just wait." And a year later, I was married to this marvelous woman. I had this little boy in my life that just completely changed my entire world. It's just been unbelievable the way that things have changed. And it changed that fast. I mean, it just went like that. God took the drug and alcohol problems that I had away. I don't go out and tempt it. I don't go out and try it just because I think they're gone, but took them away. I don't have those desires anymore. Well, occasionally I get them, but I just pray and they go away. So, I mean, and life just, I just can't describe it. And so now I've become part of this just, amazing family. And the band, I wound up, look, yeah, you see Joel up there? I don't know if Joel's here or not. The fun didn't stop, okay? Actually, I had more fun after I got saved than I did before, all combined. I mean, we wound up, we put V.B. Smith together, and a lot of folks in the church were part of that, and you guys were fantastic. We did some really cool things. We went into bars and we prayed for people. We played big concerts. We stood on stage and made a huddle and prayed right in front of everybody. I remember one time we did a benefit for a lady who had cancer. She was stage 4 cancer, and she had 2 weeks to live. And we did a benefit, and stopped right in the middle of the show. We were headlining, and I asked everybody in the bar to stand up, and we had everybody stand up. They took their hats off, and we prayed for her right in the middle of this bar. A week later, I got a phone call, and she was in remission. 2 weeks later, she was healed. That's God working, Those are just amazing things. And the support that I got here at this church was just phenomenal. Man, we've done so many fun things. And it's just great to be part of this amazing family. I've never experienced anything like this. These guys embraced me and pulled me into their family and accepted me as one of their own and treated me as one of their own, never judged me once for my past. Never judged me once for the insane things that I've done in my life. And I can't even begin to tell you all the things I've done because it would take days. But it's just amazing. Sometimes I still get mad at myself for not being where I thought that I was supposed to be. Sometimes I get mad at myself for not accomplishing what I thought I was supposed to accomplish, and I forget to look around at where I am. Because where I am is great. God's plans are way better than mine. And He has put me in a great place. So I guess the message is no matter what you've done, no matter where you've been, God will forgive you. God will forgive you. There's nothing that you've done that's too big for that. There's no guilt. The guilt is gone. Jesus took that for us. Jesus took that. He stood in for us, for our sins, all the nasty things that we've ever done in our life. He stood up and took the punishment so that we can go to heaven. That's wonderful. There is nothing bigger than that. And believe me, He's got plans for you too. Thanks.
Just one humorous observation. Somebody's been on a 2-month crack beer bender, and you call us freaks. Dwight is a musical genius. We're so blessed here, He walks in here, he takes our junky equipment and makes sound in here that's amazing. He can play that guitar. It's amazing. He picks up the video stuff. He learns this stuff. I mean, he's a genius, not just with his musical talent, but his brain. And he'll tell you his brain is damaged from all the stuff that he did with drugs and things like that. But God has redeemed that, and he does such amazing things with the video, and now he's doing a class on movie production, and I just really believe that we're going to see something amazing come out of that too. I think that we're going to see fruit that's going to change the kingdom. He's just a blessing around here all the time. He's a blessing to me personally, in our family. I love him so much, and he's such a source of joy. I would never trade, how things worked out. Even though there was some hard stuff in the path of getting Dwight into our life, I would never trade, not having him. It's so good to have him in our lives. I just want to encourage you, God is a God of miracles and transformational power. Amen. And so often we're on a path where we don't think we can get out of it. We don't see a way of escape. We're just trying to drink ourselves into oblivion, or drug ourselves into oblivion, or eat ourselves into oblivion, or whatever it is. We're just get ourselves on a path of destruction because we don't see a source of hope. God is a transformational God. He wants to totally, radically change your life so you're not stuck in a pattern of hopelessness and death. And I just encourage you today, we're getting ready to receive communion. If you want to transform your life, if you want to change your life, you can do it right now. It's just a matter of changing your heart and saying, okay, I want you, Lord. I want you, Jesus. I understand you died on the cross. Just as Dwight was explaining, he paid the price for guilt. You rose from the dead, that you're alive, and I've got a decision to make. I got a choice to make. I'm either going to do it my way or I'm going to do it your way, God. I choose to do it your way. And if you make that decision in your heart right now, then you are what they call in the Bible in John chapter 3, born again. Your spirit comes to life and you're alive. And he'll totally transform you from the inside out. It's a miraculous, transformational, powerful event that God has for every single one of us. And so I just encourage you today, if you've never made that choice, we're going to have a moment of silence here in a couple of minutes, and you can pray during that time. Just talk to God. Say it in your own words. Say, God, I want you in my life. Jesus, be the Lord of my life. I want to live for you from now on. If you pray a prayer like that, any words, it's just got to be sincere. There's no magic formula. The real thing is a heart decision where you choose and say, hey, I've got to do this. You can do that this morning. You can come up and receive communion, born again, where you've changed your destiny forever. Let's all stand together.